All right, we're with episode 2. And in this episode, I'm going to talk about inappropriate clients because I get that question a lot, especially with Brazilian waxing, especially with waxing men. How do you handle customers who are inappropriate? So, for me, as many of you know, I'm very direct and to the point. I don't take too much of anything. It's hard when you are in a service based industry to really understand where to draw the line. I tell the same story, and I'm going to tell and share my stories with you about inappropriateness. And I have people come up to me every time I share the story, and they give me their own, but they always say they feel like they have to be a receiver of that kind of energy and that kind of behavior because it's a customer. And I always say, you know what? There comes a line where people draw and they'll keep pushing towards that line unless you really put your foot down. So, my story that I have that I always tell, and the one that's most memorable for me, is I do wax men. So I do Brazilian waxing for men. And I have a really good now screening process for that. Because at first I would just take any client that would come in, and I would deal with them. And the reason I changed my client screening, as I call it, is because of this situation that happened. So I was in Alameda at that time. I was pregnant with my daughter. I was about 8, maybe 9 months, because I worked all the way up until I had her. And broad daylight, it was on a Tuesday. It happened about 11 in the morning. And he was a new customer. He had said that he had gotten Brazilians before, but his esthetician was on vacation. And could I give him a wax? He was a cyclist, so he would get them done regularly. And I was like, fine, yeah, come on in. So at that time, I wasn't charging what I charge now. So now I charge $125 per male customer, and that's to start. When I first started, I was charging maybe 50, and this was one of the reasons why I increased it, because it weeds out the crazies. And he came in. He had to be in his maybe early 60s, so he's an older gentleman. And I didn't really think anything of it. Came in, he had a suit on, and I was kind of like, okay, I did my normal. I don't touch men still. I don't touch anybody. Everybody puts on their own pre and post. So I had everything set up for him on the bed. I walked him in. That was after he filled out his client consultation form, his waxing consent form. I walked him into the treatment room and I said, here's everything for you to get comfortable. You can take off whatever you like. Here's a towel to just cover you. So when I come in, you're not going to be exposed, because we are in a doctor's office and people tend to walk by. Here you go. You have any questions? He's like, no, it's good. I'm used to this, whatever. I step out of the room. I go and I do whatever I'm doing in my actual room, in my other room. I come back a few minutes later and I walk into the door and he's there. He has his towel on, but I'm going to tell you the experience, and then I'm going to tell you what I should have done. Okay. So I walk into there. I put my gloves on. I get my wax and I'm waxing him. Everything's fine. He's talking to me normal. We're having great banter and conversation. And I get done with the service, and typically I hand clients their post products. So I usually put it in a little small disposable cup for them to use. I also give them a hot towel. So I handed him the post product, I handed him the hot towel, and he was like, that was great. You know, anytime my esthetician's out of town, I would love to keep you as my backup. And I'm like, cool, everything is good. So at that time, I was at 220 pounds when I had my daughter. So I was very, very large. And I turned around because I have my big stomach and I'm cleaning everything up. And he says, can you help me? And so I'm thinking to myself, oh gosh, I must have left some wax on, or maybe he's sticky. So I turn back around. He's taken the oil that I gave him and he's rubbing on himself vigorously. And I'm in shock. Like, oh, he's like, this oil is great. What? He's like, I'll pay you whatever you want. To do what? He said, it'll just be between me and you. To do what? I said, you know what? I don't even know how to say that. You're talking crazy in front of my baby and myself. I said, you know what? I got this whole can of wax that I could really dump on you right now. Like, and when I get angry, there's levels of anger that I have. That was all the way to the Hulk rage. Like, I was to the point where I was shaking. I could feel my blood pressure going up. And I said, you know what? it's going to take you a lot of money to get out of this room. So if you don't have $250 in cash, I'm calling the cops. No, you misunderstood me. No, I did not misunderstand you. Okay. So I slammed out of the room. I'm shaking by this time, and I'm standing at the door, and the doctor that I shared the office with is a man. So it's a male OBG. So he comes and he's looking at me, and he knows that I'm moving slow by this time. And he's like, Stephanie, what's wrong? And I said, you know what? I think there might be a situation where I have to call the cops. And the guy comes running out. He put his clothes back on. He had $250 in cash. He gave it to me. He apologized. I said, you will never come to me ever again. You'll never, ever have any services here ever again. And he ran out. So let me play it back to you in what I should have paid attention to, okay? So when I gave him everything and all the instructions and I stepped out of the door, I did my normal. I went to the next room because at that time I worked 2 rooms back and forth. So if I had a client in here, I would prep the next room. So when the next client came in 30 minutes, I could go ahead and put that client in there, finish with them. You know what I'm saying? So when I walked back in after I gave him all the instructions, he did not have a stitch of clothes on. He didn't have a wife beater. He had no necklace on. He had no jewelry on. He had no socks on. He was booty butt naked is what I say. Typically with most people who wax, they keep something on. They never are completely naked. That's been my experience, okay? So I should have paid attention to that because then he was like, oh, I'm a nudist. You know, I'm used to being naked. And I'm like, okay, I'm comfortable being naked too, but whatever. The other thing that I should have paid attention to is I assumed because he was in his maybe mid 60s that he wasn't going to be a pervert. The way he kept making innuendos, I kind of kept brushing them off. So the first one came that he's a nudist and he's comfortable. The second one is that, you know, he just really kept adjusting himself and really, it gave me weirdness, but at the same time, I was kind of in a work mode. When I get in a work mode, I don't really kind of play around. I get in, I do my thing, and I go.